Hello, everyone. I am Erika of beadingschool.com, and you are watching Coffee Time with Erika. Today, I have prepared something very special for you. For quite some time now, I have been thinking about putting together an immersive, very deep series of knowledge regarding bezeling of cabochons. What kind of stitches are there out there? What kind of beads can you incorporate? How can you choose one or another? And so on. And today, this is the first part of it. But before I would start, I would like to ask you, can you hear me? Can you see me well? I would like to greet Lita, Marlo, Susan, Marie Cecile, Lindsay, Ariana. Marlo says, in the meantime, did anyone order the new calendar June yesterday? I did. I had to get two different colors. I absolutely think it's gorgeous. And I'm so happy that you like it, Marlo. I would also like to greet Molly, Cindy, and who else is here? Ginny, and so many more beaders. And I'm very happy to hear that Facebook and YouTube are both working well. Thank you so much for letting me know. First of all, very important, I'm nearly at the end of drawing the illustrations for the Felix jewel. I have been working on it hard yesterday and also today, so I did make great progress. Thank you so much for your patience, ladies, and I hope to finish it by the end of the week together with the illustrations, the text, and the layouts. So soon we will be in touch for you, and thank you so much for your patience, ladies. But back to that big topic that I have mentioned, because I have spent the most of this day just typing in everything what came to my mind, and there is so much to know and so much to talk about that let's dive in and let's see the topic. So, as we play with different Beading School Academy boxes, we get inspired by all kinds of sources of inspiration and play with many different kinds of beads and color combinations. But what is steady from team to team and team box to team box that is there each and every time? What we play with absolutely all Beading School Academy boxes are cabochons. We always have some kind of cabochon, especially round stones, that I prefer to include in the collection. Either rivolis, chatons, low-cut round stones, dentelles, chaton roses, or maybe even Beading School art cabochons or flat-back pressed glass cabochons. They are versatile, easy to bead with, and represent some of the essentials in our stashes. This is true for the current Beading School Academy theme box, the Coral Garden 2. Besides the navets, the cushion cuts in different sizes, and the new inspiring Aurora Crystal teardrop cabochons, the theme boxes also include one of the last batches of Preciosa crystal rivolis that we could lay our hands upon. A limited edition of 8mm rivolis in dark indigo. You can still become one of our Beading School Academy students and get a full theme box accompanied by tutorials and events at the link that I have just posted. And if you are already a student or simply would like to have some rivolis on their own, you can find some still in the bead shop. I also posted the link for you. All Preciosa rivolis were discontinued, by the way, and these are some very, very special colors. So keep an eye out on them. So as we encounter different round stones, we also learn to incorporate them into our jewels in various different ways. And here I would like to mention Laura's newest Beader's Calendar jewel, the direction that Marlo said that she likes so, so much. It features pressed round-shaped coin beads that can also be bezeled, just like rivolis and chatons and all the other shapes that I have mentioned before. They are flat from the front and the black. And you can download this tutorial already since yesterday, as we always publish the Beader's Calendar jewels on the first Monday of the month. I see, Linda, your question, and I'm so, so glad that you keep asking, dear ladies. I would like to kindly ask you to make a note of your questions. I have prepared so many tips and tricks and snippets of knowledge for you that I would like to first walk you through. And I kindly ask you to make a note of your questions so I can keep on track. I can guide you through all the knowledge in a systematic way that makes it easy to absorb. And please ask your questions either when I encourage a discussion or in the very end when there will be ample space and time for everything that you are wondering about. So this is Laura's jewel, also featuring a bezel. And besides the tutorial, I would also like to mention that we still have a few of the Beader's calendars, though not that many. So if you are not yet the proud owner of Beader's Calendar 2026 yet, then please go for it. I have just posted the link. And together with it, you will receive not only Laura's jewel, but altogether 12 jewels throughout the year, always published on the first Monday of the month. As Marlo mentioned, we also have some bundles of beads for Laura's direction available for you. So you can get everything that you need for this absolutely mesmerizing set of earrings and necklace. But so ladies, any questions about Laura's tutorial, about the Beader's Calendar, or about the bundles, please let me know. And then I will dive into the overview of what is going to happen during this series studying bezels of cabochons, and specifically the first one that I was exploring and that I summarized for you. Ladies, do you have any questions about Laura's beautiful jewel, the Beader's Calendar, or the bundles that we have available for you? I would also like to greet Kim and Jennifer and many other beaders who have joined in the meantime. Bernadette is also here, and Angelina and Corinne also. If you don't have questions, then let's start indeed. First, I'm going to tell you about this whole big series. And today I will start showing you an overview of my favorite ways of bezeling. The round stones that we work with can be made of glass, Preciosa crystals, clay, and glass of like crystal glass, and also pressed glass. Some of the techniques of bezeling work better for one technique or another, but most of these stitches can be modified for all the different types of cabochons. And I will do my best to share with you all my tips and tricks around this series. So this is only the first part. Molly is asking if Laura's jewel can be made with a 12mm Rivoli. In the meantime, dear Molly, I would like to kindly ask you to ask this question in the Beading School Club or at info@beadingschool.com. Since this is not a jewel designed by me, then I am not familiar with the necessities in detail. So that's how your question will get to us, and we can answer you on behalf of Laura. So thank you so much, Molly. So I structured the knowledge that I have prepared for you by bead types and also by the different stitches. Thanks, Molly. I see your comment. The lines will get sometimes blurry between the different categories, and there will also be some exceptions. But I want to provide you with some guidelines in exploring all the different possibilities and showing you how versatile your BD knowledge can become as you master them all one by one. Over the years, together with our beading school designers, Zuzi, Veronka, and Aniko, and also with our guest designers, we have developed and published many gift tutorials that aid you while you are learning the basics. We also put together complete ebooks and many different tutorials, including bead weaving and bead embroidery patterns that feature bezels. You can find them all in the Beading School bead shop at beadingschool.com. And in case of any questions about bezels and beyond after this video is live streaming, please post all your contemplations about them in the Beading School Club and post your creations too, to celebrate your progress and also to inspire fellow beaders. I can't wait to see all of your jewels. I will start this series today by presenting you with a deep immerse in a seed bead variation called square stitch bezel. During a later coffee time with Erika, we will continue with peyote and also bezels using bigger beads in combination with seed beads. You can look forward to a coffee time with Erika focusing on right angle weave, cubic right angle weave, and prismatic right angle weave. Later on, the Miyuki Tila family, including quarter tilas, half tilas, and full tila bead bezels. As a closure, we will also talk about catching round stones with shaped beads, combining them with beads and pearls, round beads and pearls I have mentioned before, and also an insight into bezeling other shapes than round ones. It might happen that I will, while I am developing this series, modify the exact plan as I focus on different chapters of learning. It will come apparent as I type in all the knowledge, and then I will see how much time and space one specific technique requires. If you will have ideas, questions, any kind of feedback on the bezeling tips and tricks that I will be talking about, please make sure to reach out either in the Beading School Club or at info@beadingschool.com. I would like to summarize everything that we know about bezels and put together all the knowledge into one place. So actually, I have to say that first my plan was to talk about all the different types of bezels that I like today. After a bit of writing, I realized that it will not be possible, and I decided to focus only on seed bead bezels. And once I started, and as I was typing in all the tips and tricks of this first part, I realized that it will be even more beneficial to focus today only on my absolute favorite, the square stitch bezel, to be able to provide you with as many details as possible. I am also very curious about your experience, so let me walk you through the parts that I have prepared for you. Then let's talk about square stitch bezels, and then let's return to all kinds of other questions also from Sarah and everyone. Please, ladies, take notes of your questions. Let's focus now on the topic that I'm talking about, and there will be space and time for other questions in the very end. So the square stitch bezels that I will be focusing on today fits the Coral Garden Beading School Academy theme very well, as already the very first design that we beaded from the box, the retro No One Has to Bead Alone called Noir, starts with a square stitch bezel. You can download the Noir tutorial from here. And if you would like to rewatch the recording of the class, you can find it on the Beading School YouTube channel. And I have also just posted the link to that. So, lovely ladies, after the much needed detailed introduction to this wide immersive topic of bezels in bead weaving, let me take you finally to seed bead bezels, more specifically today focusing on square stitch bezeling. So first of all, hands up ladies, who has never beaded a square stitch bezel before? And if you have already beaded a square stitch bezel, then what is your opinion? How do you like to work with it? I'm very, very curious. And I see also Miriam, and she says about square stitch bezel, this is interesting. And Anna indeed says that the wide range of topics that first popped into my mind, indeed, that would never fit. And you are so right. It requires a whole series. And Robin says, this will be a wonderful learning experience. Thank you, Erika. My pleasure, dear Robin, and I can't wait to explore it together. And Linda says, sounds interesting. And Judith says, so happy to hear this. I really need it. And Tammy says, I love it. Loretta says, I love the square stitch. And Marlo says, I really like the square stitch puzzle. It reminds me of Cleopatra. What an interesting pair, the source of inspiration of ancient Egypt and square stitch bezels. I can see why do you feel that way, dear Marlo. Marcelina says, my least favorite type of bezel. I find it hard to get it to stay on the cabochon. And you know, ladies, these kinds of things, they are very, very personal. 99% of beaders might love something, and it is completely normal that we might not be fond of it. It is very important that we try the possibilities, we explore what feels good, what is easy for us, what is challenging, and then decide based on that lived experience how we feel about something. Lita says, I love them, but if I don't do them for a while, my technique suffers. I agree with you, dear Lita. With peyote, I don't feel that way, but with square stitch, I totally feel what you mean. Kristen says, I like the smooth look of them. And Carol says, I did Erika's harmony class a few years ago and got lots of practice with square stitch bezels. And Kim says, so good, because talking about square stitch is like talking about peyote. So much to learn with many ways it can build into other stitches. Lindsay says, square stitch bezels have their place. Not my favorite, but useful. And Linda says, it's a bit time consuming, but the results are beautiful. I made a great necklace with the square stitch when you introduced it to seed beads and more. I wear it a lot. And Sarah says, loved it when you teached it in seed beads and more. So let's move on. So this is how a square stitch bezel looks like. And when you look at a square stitch bezel, you can see concentric circles of different sizes, usually 2 different sizes, the Miyuki Tila size 11 circle, and then on either side, the round 15 Miyuki seed bead circle. And these concentric circles look like waves created when you throw a stone into the water. We call this square stitch bezel because of the shape of the thread path and how we attach new beads to each other before joining them into the new circles. In the top row, you can see how actually the thread looks like, but on the bottom, it's like a simplified view of it to understand why it is called square stitch bezel. Many designers, they start teaching beadwork by explaining how peyote stitch works. But in my opinion, it is easier to start learning beadwork with square stitch bezels instead of peyote. So when one of your friends asks where to start, then besides some easy no one has to beadle on motifs, this is what I would absolutely recommend. So this is the reason specifically why I am starting with this stitch for bezeling, even if most often the first possibility that pops into our minds when thinking about seed bead bezels is still peyote. And in my opinion, it is just so much easier to follow the straight repetitive lines when we are just getting used to the tiny seed beads and intricate thread passes. Just as with every skill, it is super important to pace absorbing the new knowledge well and let us take it in step by step instead of overloading ourselves right away. Moreover, sometimes instead of even more fancy details, shine and bling, a design needs the exact opposite. A pool of calmness resembling the pond after throwing in a stone that I mentioned, and concentric, nicely aligned lines. Square stitch bezels create calm in a piece. This can counterbalance the busyness of the rest of a motif or emphasize the fluid lines. Anna, in the meantime, actually says that it was for her the very first stitch that she learned. So I'm so happy that you started at this place, dear Anna. And Cindy says, Peyote is very difficult for me, especially in the first two rows because of them twisting and possibly getting out of order because I cannot hold it tight enough. So for the square stitch bezels, we use multiple sizes of seed beads. We use round 15 Miyuki seed beads and cylindrical Miyuki beads called Miyuki Tila in the size 11. What differs is the initial number of the beads that we pick up and work with for the very first circle, and then, of course, for the consecutive circles. And you can apply square stitch to many different round stones and even pearls in different shapes. I will show with you the resources that we have so you can learn square stitch bezels. I will share with you a link to a blog post, a downloadable PDF, even a video. And you can also find there by the downloadable PDF the numbers of Miyuki Tila beads that you need for those initial circles. So these are the ones that we incorporated. So for a 7mm Chaton Rose Maxima, you need 19 pieces. For an 8mm Rivoli Chaton Nacre Cabochon or Pearl, you need 22. For a 10mm Rivoli, you need 28 pieces. For an 11mm Chaton Rose, you need 28. For a 12mm Rivoli, you need 30. And for a 14mm Rivoli, you need 34 pieces of Miyuki Tilikas in that very first row. And I have for you 3 tips and tricks before I would share the links. My first tip, and the most important that I can share with you, is that aim for filling up the holes to keep the circles of Miyuki Tilikas and size 15 seed bead circles perfectly round. By filling up the holes, you will create a grip for the thread, and since the holes will be fuller with the thread, they will stay more parallel to each other instead of moving up and down. So this is a very important difference when we compare square stitch bezels to peyote, because with peyote we actually need to allow the beads to move a little bit further from each other to create the zip-shaped patterns. But with square stitch bezel, we want to keep them in straight lines as much as possible without making the circles rigid. So this is what is the most important part of practice. My second tip is that please do not tie a knot. Instead, stick to repeating the thread pass. What I do is that I wrap the tail thread on my index finger, and that is how I keep the bezel, keep the tension as I want it to be. This way, when I feel like how much do I need to pull on the thread, then I can allow it still a little bit to slip into the beads from my finger, or pull it more when I feel that it has become loose. So do not tie a knot, dear ladies. And Ginny says, filling the holes was a great thing I learned from square stitch bezel and have applied to other beading. And I'm really glad to hear that, Ginny. And and indeed, especially when you are starting a motif with some bigger beads, then this is your best trick that you can do. So my third note on square stitch bezels is that the structure, how the beads line up, they create a texture that makes it easy to attach to them different kinds of beads and to enlarge the motifs. So I would like to, my third final tip for this part is to let yourself play, let yourself experiment. Don't stop and explore how you can make the square stitch bezel even bigger. So about the resources that I have mentioned, we have a full blog post about square stitch bezels waiting for you on the Beading School blog. I have just posted the link so you can find it. And we also have a downloadable tutorial waiting for you that you can save to your computer. It is a PDF that you can print, you can save into your computer. So I have also posted the link to the downloadable file. And this page where we have the downloadable file, it also has a video embedded into the page that you can watch, where I am showing you how I actually bead a square stitch bezel. So if you are new to it, this is where you can see how I am creating a square stitch bezel. Over the years, I encountered and experimented with different tips and tricks when it comes to different types of focals. So even within square stitch bezels. And some types work better when I close the back of the bezel. Some look more fluid and even when I close the front first. And you can learn about all these additional tips and tricks when it comes to different focals, for example, in square stitch bezels, in my ebook called In Harmony with Square Stitch Bezels. I first created it for the Seed Beads and More Facebook group as a resource for their 20,000 beaders, many of you being here and actually mentioning the In Harmony series. At the moment, the ebook is available only in the Beading School Bead Shop and contains links to extra videos also explaining the many details that I have discovered during my beady playtime. I am now posting the link also to the In Harmony ebook. So if you don't have it yet, I highly recommend it. And I have a feeling that many other beaders I can see, okay, here is Miriam, she says, also recommending the harmony set is so beautiful. I highly recommend to bead it, a very good exercise for square stitch. So this series of tutorials, this ebook, it guides you on your journey to get very, very friendly with square stitch bezels and create for you an alternative to the well-known peyote stitch. And this is one of the jewels that you can create from the ebook. Another variation of the earring. Then you can also bead a full, beautiful statement bracelet from it. I really love wearing this on my wrist because despite the size, it just feels so smooth thanks to the square stitch bezels and all the seed beads that it is very, very comfortable to wear. There is also this statement necklace included in the In Harmony ebook. And it can create a beautiful set together with the bracelet or together with one of the variations of the earrings. So I would also like to tell you a little bit about how you can add square stitch bezels into your beaded motif. So you can, for example, start with the bezel and build around it. And this is what you can see in the Lempicka design. It comes from the Art Deco Beading School Academy team. It was one of the first ones that we played with together. I am posting the link to the tutorial of the Lempicka earrings because I think it's such a forgotten cutie and it needs more attention. So this starts with an 8 millimeter round stone, and it starts with the bezel itself. And I just want to mention that square stitches are now very widely used in bead weaving, but can also be incorporated into bead embroidery using fabric as a foundation. I will get back to that a little bit later. But first, I would like to show you several examples of bead weaving tutorials for different types and sizes of cabochons. What's wonderful about this stitch is that when it comes to this, you can easily substitute rivolis with chatons and Preciosa nacre cabochons if you still have some of those, or even round pearls, since you need the same amount of beads for the initial circle, and the rest of the motif can remain the same. So for example, when you bead the Lempicka earrings that you can see on the screen, then you can start with a chaton, as I did, but you can also swap it for a Preciosa crystal rivoli, or the pearls, or the nacre cabochons. So this I find like such an amazing feature of square stitch bezels. And here I would like to ask, what is your favorite type of focal when it comes to square stitches? What do you like to use the most in the middle of a square stitch bezel? Rivoli, chaton, pearl, nacre cabochon. What's your favorite? And again, I would like to emphasize that there are some tricks. Sometimes it's better to start from the back, sometimes it's better to start from the front, and you can find all of this experience from me summarized in the In Harmony ebook. In the meantime, Susan says, Lempicka has been on my list to bead for a while. And Lutka says, it's a stunning design. Chantal says, I love the Lempicka design. I have not yet beaded it. And Ariana says, got fun of the last play boxes during the Advent season. So good explained and so pretty projects. I'm so happy, Ariana, that you could get one and that you find it useful. Ginny says, always love to do chatons. Miriam says, nacre cabochons bezeled with square stitch looks so clean. I love it. I really share your opinion, dear Miriam. Angelina says, it has been cabochons and rivolis for years, but you really got me into the smaller chaton bezeling. Lita says, I like the chaton. The deeper point back makes it easier to close the bezel. And Ariana says, nacre cabochons and chaton roses. I found a way to bead in a flat bead on the back and use it as flat pad on the back and use it as studs. That is amazing, Ariana. And I really, really love doing that. I know that also Susie loves doing that, beading a flat pad or gluing a flat pad in the back, because then we can easily create matchy earrings for all kinds of other designs. And I'm so glad that we share this. But besides Lempicka, there is also saguaro. I will also share the link with you. This comes from the Jardin Majorelle collection. So what has happened here in comparison with Lempicka? When we beaded Lempicka, then we started with the bezel. But in case of some other designs, okay, we might be the first bezel here as the first part of the design, but then the second, the third, the fourth, they don't need to necessarily be beaded on their own. It is super easy to find a Miyuki Delica on the edge of a beaded motif and then connect right away a square stitch bezel. What you need to do, you find that delica or you attach another delica with two tiny square stitches to an already existing part of the motif or a full motif, and then using that very first delica you pick up the additional number to create the first circle needed for the bezel, and you can bezel right away without starting a different thread. If it comes a bit tricky to keep the tail thread separate, I recommend securing and trimming thread ends to make it easier to work with and to prevent tangling the thread into the part that is already done. And in the meantime, Angelina says Jardin Majorelle, one of the all-time favorites. These colors are bursting with life. And Lutka says she likes bezeling pearls. And Lita says, my all-time favorite design of yours, Erika. Thank you so much, dear Lita. And Kristen says that is a benefit of square stitch bezel. And Loretta says, tend to go with chatons and rivoli. I tend to struggle a little with pearls. I totally understand, dear Loretta, since they have a rounded shape, then the beads might slip to one or the other side. And Lindsay says that she likes to bezel chaton roses, nacre pearls, and also rivolis. Well, another example of square stitch bezels is indeed one made here with the nacre, Preciosa nacre cabochons. We do have still some leftovers in the bead shop, but they were also discontinued, by the way. This is the red lock design inspired by the beloved holiday of Saint Lucia from Sweden. And here I wanted to show you that besides chatons, you can also use these flat back nacre cabochons and then enlarge the design easily. Then this is Scarlet from the same team, playing with reds and blacks and silvers and a tiny bit of gold. And here I used a different size of red round stone, and you can see that the stitch itself, it is the same. You go around and around in the same way, you just adjust the number. So here is a 12 millimeter rivoli in the middle of the Scarlet design. And then I have here Oris, which comes from the Dangerous Liaisons, which was also one of my favorites because we were getting inspired by a book, and I love getting inspired by literature. So the Oris, it's actually a free gift tutorial, and what differs here, that since it is a chunky cabochon that we are using, it's actually a Preciosa nacre pearl, also discontinued sadly, but also you can still find some in the beading school bead shop. They are amazing. So for Oris, I had to use several rows of Miyuki Delica beads, and you can download this tutorial as a gift from me to look into it, that how it was precisely done. And I think, oh, where is that comment? Corinne said, in the meanwhile, one of my favorites. And Linda says, I really loved bezeling the large flatback pearl cabochon. Rivolis are more difficult to keep it straight. And Kim says, another one of my favorites. Interesting. A lot of my favorites visually have square stitch bezel. Someone might have an affection towards the square stitch bezel. And Laura says, Miriam says, this was an easy and so lovely one. So, lovely ladies, as I mentioned, square stitch bezels can also be used in bead embroidery. You need to stitch down the first row of beads around the flatback cabochon glued to the ultra suede, and then close the front of the bezel in the same way as with bead weaving. I truly appreciate this option as it provides me with an opportunity to bead a seamless bezel, even if, and to make a perfect bezel, even if the number of delicas in that first circle that I stitch down to the fabric is an odd number. For 100% perfect Peyote bezel, we need an even number of Miyuki delicas. I do not mind it that much if there is a difference, and I need to do the trick to make it work even if it is an odd number, as visually it is only a small glitch in bead embroidered Peyote bezels. However, if you want 100% perfect one, then even if you have an odd number, then there is a solution. That works perfectly also, for example, for smaller motifs, where the imperfection would be more noticeable. So you can choose that you can stick to the round Miyuki 15s and the Miyuki Delica size 11s in embroidery as the first row, but it's also possible to start with the round size 11s for the widest part, as Aniko is showing and teaching us in her Geometric Eden bead embroidery tutorial. She uses one of the Klimt collection art cabochons to create this beautiful bead embroidered pendant and a square stitch bezel for bead embroidery. And you can find the tutorial at the link that I have just posted. And now it is time to ask your questions. And in the meantime, I have prepared some questions that I have found at the bottom of the blog post. And in the meantime, please type in your questions about square stitch bezels. So Niti said about square stitch bezels, I love this little pool of calmness. My mind is already on a journey finding ways to embellish it and create something less calm. It is a wonderful idea and definitely achieved what you wanted with it. Thank you so much for sharing. Dear Niti, I'm super happy that you love beading with square stitch bezels. Then Faye says, such a beautifully simple way to bezel the nacre cabochons, an elegant addition to include in our beaded pieces. Thank you. Ruth asked, I wish you would condense the instructions and have a place to print the instructions. It is hard to bead on my computer with it running and beading if I don't have the space. If you had a button to print the instructions, it would be very helpful. And by now, luckily, as I said, we already have the square stitch bezel tutorial in a form of a PDF. So you can download it, save it, print it as you wish. Then Paris says, thank you very much for this tutorial on how to do a square stitch bezel of an nacre cabochon. It's very beautiful, and it's always nice to have more than one possibility for a beaded bezel around beads and cabochons. Very nice. Then Kariana says, so can this be done on a crystal rivory or a flatback cabochon? Yes, indeed. There are so many possibilities. And Marcelina has here a question asking, can you use square stitch bezel on cabochons that are other shapes, such as ovals, squares, or rectangles? Dear Marcelina, on some of them, you can use square stitch bezels without modifications. I would say ovals are great for it because the bezel automatically adjusts to the oval. But the sharper the corners, the more difficult it is to create a seamless square stitch bezel. So actually something that, because I noted down two ideas that I still want to explore. And this will be the third one, that I would like to see if square stitch bezel can be modified for pointy corner cabochons. If anyone has experience, then please, please, please share it with me. Lovely ladies, other questions? I will also scroll back a little bit to see if you have asked some questions. But if you have questions, then the best is to type them in now to make sure that I find them. Irene says, I've been doing peyote for 25 years and I can do it in my sleep. I'm still finding it very difficult to do clean, even square stitch bezels. Mine never look as perfect and even as Erika's. I'm not sure how to make them better. Dear Irene, can you please take a picture of a square stitch bezel that you've beaded and post it in the beading school club? Then we can all put together our heads and see and maybe help you along the way, because in general I have shared my tips and tricks, but it would be good to see what is exactly the problem. Ginny says, I printed the PDF and reference back to it almost each time. I also love the Harmony series that was done a while back and keep them handy. Sometimes I need a reminder to get started. So, lovely ladies, as I said, there are still some questions that I would like to find answers for when it comes to square stitch bezels. And off-topic questions, dear ladies, please at the very end. Now I still would like to focus on square stitch bezels. So what do I want to explore still about square stitch bezels? Being creative, no matter if we are a beader or a beadwork designer, and I strongly encourage you to actually blur that line in general, also blur the line in being creative on your bead mat and beyond. Because being creative means that we continuously keep asking what if questions. What if this? What if that? And there are two that came to my mind regarding square stitch bezels. And now, thanks to Marcelina, I also have a third one. The third one being square stitch bezels for more pointy shapes. The first question that popped into my mind is, would it be possible to create square stitch bezels from bigger beads, different beads, not only Miyuki Tila size 11 and round 15 size 15s, maybe the combination of round or oval shaped fire polished beads instead of the delicas, to create like a chunkier design, and groups of smaller beads in groups instead of one seed bead in the basic variation. So that is just a question for now, and I would be curious about your thoughts. And then the second question, that in the remaining 10 minutes before we would meet, I have already started to explore, is that what does it look like when I use something else as the focal? Something that contradicts the clean concentric circles of the square stitch bezel. And what came into my mind recently, and today I got to finally explore it, that what if I tried to bezel Preciosa balls? I don't want to show you this yet. So when I started to explore incorporating Preciosa balls into my beadwork around the Advent season last year. They can be used in necklaces, but they can be used in the body, in the motif itself. But for quite some time, I was wondering that how would they look like if they would be bezeled. And I have a feeling that combined with peyote stitch, it would become super busy since the balls themselves look busy with all the crystals inserted into the metal frame. But today I finally started to explore how would it look like if I bezeled them with square stitch. And for me, this fits. This is a coincidence, by the way. As you can maybe see on the picture, finally we have a full array of amazing, sparkly, beautiful 10 millimeter Preciosa ball beads waiting for you in the beading school bead shop. So it's a coincidence that they were finally ready now. But when I bezeled one or started to bezel one with square stitch bezel, then I found that it fits the theme of the coral garden perfectly, because the ball in the middle of the crystal, middle of the bezel, looks like bubbles in water, and then the square stitch bezel calms it down and divides it a little bit from the rest of the motif that might be built around the Preciosa ball. So I dare to say that this can be done, ladies. I need to still finish it. I am halfway, but I hope that you like it. So, lovely ladies, in the meantime, in the beading school bead shop, we have waiting for you 10 millimeter Preciosa fancy ball beads and boxes in sun and moon colors. The sun colors, as always, they contain the warm tones, and the moon colors, they contain the cold tones. And if you go for both boxes and you grab a bundle, then it will be available for you for a super good price. Each of the boxes contain 10 millimeter Preciosa balls. Let me tell you how many. 40 pieces of sun colors in the sun box, 40 pieces of moon colors in the moon box. 40 pieces, it means that there are altogether 10 different colors, 4 pieces each of them. And there are also silver and gold metal settings within one box. And until next week's Coffee Time with Erika, it means the 9th of June 2026, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. New York City, 8 a.m. California, or 3 a.m. New Zealand, you can get the bundle for a 10% discount. We will also include a bag of Preciosa bicon beads. For every beader, we have a gift for every beader, not every order, together with your bead orders. So, lovely ladies, you can now type in your questions about the bundles and the Preciosa boss, and I'm going to look at your previous questions. Ginny and many others says, this is off the subject, but very shocked that the previous crystal band wants us crafters back. I'm not entirely shocked. Like, I have learned also in my personal life that saying never ever again, it is a futile thing. So even if they said that they are not interested at crafters, I had a feeling that at one point they might change their minds. The communication when they announced the big news a few years ago, it was so sorry, but from a marketing viewpoint, it was so badly done. Like you just don't do that to your customers. I found it very amateur back then. It was chaotic on one hand, and also degrading how they talked about hobbyists. And I understand the decision. Lots of unpopular decisions need to be made in order for a company to stay alive, not just to thrive, but to stay alive and be here. But those changes can be communicated in very different ways. And from your comments, I see and I remember personally that what a sour feeling I had when I read the news back then. I still do have that. We might have some in the future, but I love Preciosa. So let's think about it in the future. This is not a question that I can answer at the moment, since we just got to know it yesterday, and these decisions and strategy need to be evaluated a lot more carefully than just pew, out of my head. So I kindly ask you for patience with that. And Robin says, my challenge with square stitch bezels start with the first row, getting the tension right. Dear Robin, what I do is that I put the first row of when I'm already like repeating the thread path on my index finger, and I want to see just a tiny, tiny, tiny gap, like not between the beads. They should not be squished together, but you should also not have like big gaps in between the beads. So please look at the video that I have mentioned. You can find it on the page where you can download the PDF from, and there you will be able to see that how big are my gaps between the Delica beads. And Linda says, when I was experimenting with square stitch, I explored increasing the shape only with square stitch, but with a combination of right angle weave. And I'm so curious about it, Linda. Can you maybe post the result of your experimentation in the Beading School Club? I would love to see it. And Lita says, I had originally been taught to do square stitch bezels in groups of 2 beads. I know what you mean, Lita, and that is something that I have also seen before. By the way, square stitch is a stitch. I do not believe anyone knows whose invention it was, and I do not claim it as an Erika or Beading School invention. It is a stitch that we all use and benefit from, but I am developing lots of resources to learn it, sharing my personal tips and tricks, and I am widely incorporating it in my jewels. And what I found that when I add beads to square stitch bezels 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, then it is harder to make the lines smooth and nice, and it's easier for me if I work with the beads one by one. It is a lot more work, it's double the work. However, for me, the aesthetics is really, really worth it. And Miriam says, I saw a large necklace with all kinds of round crystals joined together, all bezeled with herringbone. The result looks the same as square stitch, just the beading direction is different. And that is also very interesting, dear Miriam. And we do need herringbone bezels too. It's also a possibility. So I am making a note, and this is what I'm talking about. No one can come up with all the tips and tricks and ideas. No one can come up with all the questions. Sorry. So I am so, so, so grateful for you, ladies, that you are chipping in with your ideas. I'm looking through the questions. I would like to make sure that I find everything. Marcelina agrees about what I said about the crystals. Very unhappy with the way they did that. Not sure if I will be buying from them again. And Ginny says, I'm totally happy with our present day company. And Angelina says, awesome gift, the Bicons this week. Also want to say hi to Sharon. And Kim agrees about adding beads one by one, that it is just so worth it. So lovely, ladies. Thank you so much for your attention today. When I first published some Preciosa ball beads, the 6mm version, then it was a coffee time with Erika when by the end of the broadcast, all the boxes were gone. And I'm very, very curious. How do you receive the 10mm Preciosa ball beads? Because I think they offer also many, many different possibilities to play with our beads. And I am very curious if you will take advantage of them and create that bubble look for your coral garden designs that I was talking about earlier. So lovely, ladies. Do you have any questions left? On Thursday, we are going to meet for No One Has to Bead Alone and bead together Zuzi's super cute design for Coral Garden featuring the teardrop cabochons. And I can't wait to bead it. It was one of the designs that I liked the most. So lovely, ladies, if there are... Oh, Chantal says, I bought the bundle plus extras. Thank you so much, dear Chantal and everyone. So lovely, ladies, thank you for your attention today. I would like to wish you a wonderful rest of the day. See you on Thursday. Take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and happy beading. Bye-bye.